July 10th, 1943, Sicily's southern coast. Private John Rowell hits the dirt as machine gun fire rips across the beach, kicking up sand in lethal patterns that pin his entire squad behind whatever cover they can find. The invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky, has barely begun, and already men are dying. Rowell glances at the dog lying beside him, a 60-pound German Shepherd-Collie-Husky mix named Chips, donated to the Army by a New York family who believed their pet could make a difference in this war. What happens in the next 60 seconds will become one of the most extraordinary acts of courage in World War II history, and it won't be performed by a soldier. The Italian machine gun nest is perhaps 50 yards away, tucked into a small stone hut that offers perfect fields of fire across the landing zone. Allied soldiers are caught in the open, unable to advance, unable to retreat. Men are screaming for medics. The situation is deteriorating with every passing second. Standard infantry tactics would require mortars, grenades, or a flanking maneuver, all of which take time that the pinned-down Americans don't have. Chips makes a different calculation. Before Rowell can react, the dog breaks free from his leash and charges directly toward the machine gun position. No hesitation, no apparent fear, just explosive acceleration across open ground while bullets crack through the air around him. Rowell watches in horror as his dog, his responsibility, his partner for months of training and deployment, disappears into the hut where the muzzle flashes originate. Then the firing stops. Inside that stone hut, 4 Italian soldiers are experiencing something they never anticipated in their military careers. They'd been trained to fight infantry, to suppress advancing troops, to hold defensive positions against human attackers. Nothing in their training prepared them for a furious 60-pound animal launching itself through the doorway with teeth bared and absolute determination in its eyes. A single shot rings out, the Italians managing one desperate round, then chaos erupts inside the confined space. The sound is impossible for the Americans outside to fully comprehend. Growling, shouting, the metallic clatter of equipment being knocked aside, human voices rising in panic. Rowell later recalled, "There was an awful lot of noise and the firing stopped. Then I saw one Italian soldier come out the door with Chips at his throat. The Italian stumbles into the sunlight with a German Shepherd mix clamped onto his neck, the dog's jaws locked with the grip that military trainers had spent months perfecting. Rowell immediately calls out, 'I called him off before he could kill the man.' Chips releases on command, the mark of exceptional training overriding combat instinct, and the Italian soldier drops to his knees, hands raised. Within seconds, 3 more Italian soldiers emerge from the hut with their hands in the air. 4 enemy combatants, controlling a critical defensive position, have surrendered to a dog. The machine gun nest that had pinned down an entire squad of American infantry has been neutralized not by superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but by one animal's willingness to charge directly into danger. As Rowell approaches the hut, he sees the cost of Chips's courage. The dog has sustained a wound to his scalp and burns around his mouth and eye from the powder blast of weapons fired at close range. The single shot the Italians managed to fire had grazed Chips's head. The burns suggest he'd gotten close enough to the machine gun barrel that the muzzle blast seared his face. Any of these injuries should have stopped the attack. None of them had. Chips shows no indication of pain. He stands alert, watching the prisoners, still performing his duty as a sentry dog, even with blood matting his fur and burns marking his face. Rowell calls for a medic, but Chips won't stand down. The same determination that drove him into that hut is now keeping him on guard over the soldiers his attack forced to surrender. The squad secures the prisoners and pushes inland, continuing the invasion of Sicily that will eventually drive Axis forces from the island. Before the day ends, Chips performs another act that demonstrates his exceptional capabilities. He sniffs out 10 more enemy soldiers hiding in positions that would have ambushed the advancing Americans, forcing their capture. That's 12 enemy soldiers neutralized by one dog in a single day of combat operations. The story of how Chips came to be on that beach begins more than a year earlier, when the U.S. Army issued an unusual call to American families: donate your dogs for war service. The military needed animals for sentry duty, patrol work, and messenger runs. Roles that could save American lives if the right dogs could be found and trained. The Wren family of New York had acquired Chips as a puppy, recognizing immediately that they had an exceptional animal. When the Army's call went out, they made the difficult decision to donate him. John Wren, who was a toddler when Chips left for war, later recalled, "It killed my mother to part with him. But Chips was strong and smart, and we knew he'd be good." The Army's K-9 Corps training program was intense and selective. Dogs had to demonstrate intelligence, physical capability, stable temperament under stress, and responsiveness to commands even in chaotic situations. They learned to detect enemy soldiers by scent, to remain silent when necessary, to attack on command and, critically, to release and stand down when ordered. This last skill separated trained military dogs from simply aggressive animals. A dog that couldn't be controlled was as dangerous to friendly forces as to enemies. Chips excelled at every aspect of training. His mixed breeding gave him the intelligence of a German Shepherd, the toughness of a Husky, and the loyalty of a Collie, a combination that produced an ideal military working dog. He was assigned to Private John Rowell, and the two deployed together to North Africa as part of the 3rd Infantry Division. By the time of the Sicily invasion, Chips had already traveled across North Africa, served in Italy, and even met British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt during the Casablanca Conference in January 1943, where he performed guard duty. But meeting world leaders doesn't earn a dog legendary status. Charging a machine gun nest does. For his actions on July 10, 1943, Chips was awarded the Silver Star, recognizing his heroism in combat. He was also recommended for both a Distinguished Service Cross and a Purple Heart, awards that would have placed him among the most highly decorated individuals of World War II. The recommendations triggered immediate controversy. The objections weren't about whether Chips deserved recognition. Everyone who witnessed his actions agreed he'd performed an act of extraordinary courage that saved American lives. The controversy centered on whether military decorations intended for human soldiers should be awarded to animals. Some argued it diminished the meaning of these honors when awarded to non-humans. Others countered that courage is courage, regardless of species, and that Chips had earned these awards through actions most human soldiers would hesitate to attempt. The Army ultimately reversed the Silver Star Award and declined to grant the Distinguished Service Cross or Purple Heart, establishing policy that military decorations would be reserved for human service members. The decision didn't diminish Chips's reputation among the soldiers who served with him. To the men of the 3rd Infantry Division, the dog who'd charged into enemy fire and forced 4 armed soldiers to surrender remained a hero, regardless of what medals hung from his collar. Chips did receive one more honor before leaving the war zone. He met General Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe and future President of the United States. The meeting did not go entirely as planned. Eisenhower, apparently forgetting that sentry dogs are trained to attack anyone except their handler, bent down to pet the heroic animal. Chips responded exactly as trained, biting the general. The incident caused no serious injury, and was later treated as an amusing anecdote, proof that even heroes sometimes bite the hand that wants to congratulate them. For a sentry dog, there are no exceptions to the rules, not even for generals who would later become president. After more than 3 years of service across multiple combat zones, Chips finally returned home to the Wren family in New York. John Wren, now old enough to remember the reunion, later recalled, "I mostly remember when I saw him in the cage and realized that was my dog coming home. I was quite excited." As was everybody. The transition from combat zones to suburban American life should have meant peaceful retirement for the veteran war dog. Instead, Chips had one final act of heroism to perform. Just months after returning home, the family visited Quogue Beach on Long Island. Young John Wren wandered too close to the water and was suddenly caught in the undertow, dragged beneath the surface. John later recalled what his mother told him. Chips was the only one who saw it happen. He ran into the water and pulled me out by my swim trunks. He was quite an animal. A dog who'd charged machine gun nests in Sicily had saved his young handler one last time, this time from the ocean rather than enemy soldiers. Tragically, Chips's retirement was brief. 7 months after returning home, he died of kidney failure. Whether the condition was related to his combat service, the stress of years in war zones, exposure to battlefield conditions, or the wounds he'd sustained, will never be known. What's certain is that an exceptional animal had given everything to his duty, served with distinction across multiple theaters of war, and saved American lives repeatedly through courage that most human soldiers would struggle to match. For decades, Chips's story remained a footnote in World War II history, remembered by the soldiers who served with him and the family who donated him, but largely forgotten by the broader public. The Army's decision to rescind his Silver Star meant that official military records didn't reflect his extraordinary service. Then, years later, recognition finally came. Chips was awarded the Dickin Medal, the highest honor for animal bravery in wartime. The award, established in Britain in 1943, is often described as the Victoria Cross for animals, the equivalent of the highest military decoration for valor. John Wren, now an adult, flew to London, England, to receive the award on Chips's behalf. "It really made me feel great to see him finally receive some recognition as a special creature," Wren said, which, in our view, he was. The tactical significance of Chips's actions on July 10, 1943, extended beyond the immediate neutralization of one machine gun nest. The Sicily invasion, Operation Husky, was the first major Allied invasion of Axis-held territory in Europe, a massive amphibious assault involving 160,000 troops landing across multiple beaches. Every defensive position that could be quickly neutralized meant fewer casualties, faster advance inland, and improved chances of establishing the beachheads necessary for the invasion's success. Machine gun nests were particularly dangerous to amphibious landings because they could sweep entire sections of beach with fire, pinning down troops in the open where they were most vulnerable. Neutralizing such positions typically required either indirect fire from mortars and artillery, which took time to coordinate and wasn't always accurate, or direct assault by infantry squads, which meant exposing soldiers to fire during the approach. Chips's charge eliminated the position in under a minute with no American casualties beyond the dog's own injuries. The squad that had been pinned down could advance. The timetable for the invasion at that section of beach wasn't disrupted. And 4 Italian soldiers, who might have killed American troops before being neutralized, instead surrendered without inflicting casualties. Multiply that scenario across the thousands of small unit actions that comprised the Sicily campaign, and the value of military working dogs becomes clear. They weren't just mascots or curiosities, they were force multipliers that saved lives and enhanced combat effectiveness. The K-9 Corps that Chips served in deployed approximately 10,000 dogs during World War II, serving in every theater of the war. These animals performed roles that would have required additional human soldiers. Sentry duty that allowed men to sleep, knowing the dog would alert to approaching danger. Patrol work that detected ambushes before soldiers walked into them. And messenger runs that delivered communications when radio silence was necessary. The casualty rate among these animals was significant. They faced the same dangers as human soldiers: bullets, artillery, disease, harsh environmental conditions, but without the protective equipment or medical care that humans received. Many never returned home. Those that did often carried both physical and psychological scars from their service. Yet the dogs that served demonstrated capabilities that consistently surprised even their handlers. Their senses detected threats humans missed. Their courage in combat situations sometimes exceeded that of trained soldiers. And their loyalty to their handlers created bonds that veterans remembered for the rest of their lives. Private John Rowell, who served with Chips throughout the dog's deployment, later spoke about what it meant to work with an animal in combat. The trust between handler and dog in a war zone goes beyond anything in civilian life. You're depending on that dog to alert you to danger, to protect you when you sleep, to help you do your job. And the dog is depending on you for food, water, commands in dangerous situations. When Chips broke free and charged that machine gun nest, he wasn't following orders. I hadn't commanded him to attack. He saw his squad in danger and reacted. That's not just training. That's something else. That's courage. The debate over whether animals can truly demonstrate courage, or whether they're simply responding to training and instinct, continues among military historians and animal behavior experts. What's indisputable is the effect their actions have on combat outcomes and the soldiers who witness them. When a dog charges toward enemy fire while trained human soldiers remain pinned down behind cover, the result is the same, regardless of whether we call it courage, training, instinct, or some combination of all three. Enemy positions get neutralized, American lives get saved, missions succeed that might otherwise have failed. The U.S. military continues to employ working dogs today, with modern K-9 units serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other combat zones. These animals detect explosives, search buildings, provide security, and perform roles that technology still can't fully replicate. The dogs deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq in the 21st century are direct descendants, in mission, if not always lineage, of the dogs like Chips, who served in World War II. Modern military working dogs receive more sophisticated training, better medical care, and legal protections that their World War II predecessors lacked. The Military Working Dog Team's National Monument, dedicated in 2013 at Joint Base San Antonio in Texas, honors the service of all military dogs throughout American history. Chips's story features prominently in that monument's documentation of World War II K-9 service. The tactical lessons from Chips's actions on July 10, 1943, remain relevant. Speed and aggression can overcome firepower advantages. Unconventional approaches can succeed where conventional tactics stall. And sometimes the solution to a tactical problem comes from an unexpected source, like a donated family pet who happens to possess extraordinary courage. For the Italian soldiers in that machine gun nest, the encounter must have been terrifying. They'd been trained to fight infantry, to suppress advancing troops with machine gun fire, to hold defensive positions. Nothing prepared them for a dog bursting through the door with the speed and ferocity of a trained attack animal. The decision to surrender rather than continue fighting was entirely rational. When your defensive position has been compromised by an attacker, you can't effectively fight. And enemy infantry is certainly approaching to exploit that breach. Surrender becomes the logical choice. The fact that their attacker was a dog rather than a human soldier didn't change the tactical calculation. They were just as neutralized, just as unable to continue fighting, as if a full squad of American infantry had assaulted their position. For the American soldiers on that beach, watching Chips charge across open ground toward enemy fire, the moment crystallized something essential about the nature of courage under fire. Species doesn't matter. Rank doesn't matter. What matters is the willingness to act when action is required, to move toward danger when everyone else is seeking cover, to do what the mission demands regardless of the personal cost. Chips didn't calculate odds or consider alternatives. He saw his pack, his squad, in danger and attacked the source of that danger. The simplicity of his motivation doesn't diminish the significance of his actions. If anything, it highlights something profound about courage. Sometimes it's not about complex reasoning or careful consideration, but about the immediate instinctive response to protect those you're bonded to. The Wren family, who donated Chips to the army, knowing they might never see him again, demonstrated another form of courage, the willingness to sacrifice something precious for the collective good of the war effort. As John Wren noted, "It killed my mother to part with him, but they recognized that Chips could serve a purpose larger than being a family pet." That sacrifice paid dividends beyond what the family could have imagined. The dog they donated didn't just serve adequately, he became legendary, saved American lives, and demonstrated capabilities that changed how the military thought about working dogs in combat. When Chips died just months after returning home, having saved young John Wren from drowning in what would be his final heroic act, the family had the bittersweet knowledge that their dog had lived an extraordinary life. He'd traveled the world, met world leaders, served with distinction in combat, earned recognition for valor, and saved lives both in war and peace. Not many humans can claim a legacy that significant. The story of Chips challenges comfortable assumptions about the nature of heroism, courage, and military service. We want to believe that these qualities are uniquely human, that they require conscious choice and moral reasoning that animals don't possess. Yet repeatedly, throughout history, animals in military service have demonstrated behaviors that, if performed by humans, would be immediately recognized as heroic. Whether we call it courage or instinct, training or loyalty, the result remains the same. A dog charged a machine gun nest, forced 4 enemy soldiers to surrender, took wounds in the process, and continued performing his duty for the rest of that day. Those are the facts. The interpretation, whether it represents true courage or something else, matters less than the outcome. July 10, 1943, on a beach in Sicily, became the day a donated family pet became a war hero. The machine gun nest that could have killed dozens of American soldiers was silenced. The invasion timetable at that section of beach proceeded, and 4 Italian soldiers surrendered to an opponent they never expected to face. In the end, perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Chips's story is how unremarkable it seemed to those who served with him. To the soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division, having a dog charge enemy positions was just part of combat operations. Chips had already proven himself in North Africa and Italy. His actions on Sicily were exceptional in their results, but consistent with his character. That's the real measure of a hero, not the single dramatic act, but the consistent demonstration of courage and capability across countless situations where lesser individuals would have failed. Chips served for more than 3 years in combat zones. He protected his handlers, detected enemy soldiers, forced surrenders, and saved American lives repeatedly. The machine gun nest on July 10, 1943, was his most famous action, but not his only significant contribution. Every night he stood sentry duty while soldiers slept. Every patrol where he detected ambushes before soldiers walked into them. Every moment his presence gave American troops confidence that they had an extra set of eyes, ears, and teeth watching for danger. That cumulative contribution, the 3 years of consistent, exceptional service, matters more than any single dramatic moment. It's why veterans who served with Chips remembered him decades later. It's why his handler, Private John Rowell, spoke of him with a respect and affection that transcended the typical human-animal relationship. It's why John Wren felt such satisfaction when Chips finally received official recognition. It really made me feel great to see him finally receive some recognition as a special creature, which, in our view, he was. On July 10, 1943, a German Shepherd-Collie-Husky mix, donated by a New York family charged into enemy fire, neutralized a machine gun nest, forced 4 enemy soldiers to surrender, and saved American lives in the opening hours of the Sicily invasion. The Army initially gave him a Silver Star, then took it away because he was a dog. Decades later, the highest honor for animal valor in wartime was bestowed upon him, recognizing what the soldiers who served with him already knew. Chips was a hero, regardless of species, regardless of official recognition, regardless of whether we fully understand what motivated him to charge toward those machine guns, while human soldiers remained pinned down. The thunder of those Italian machine guns stopped because a 60-pound dog decided they needed to stop. That's the day Chips became a legend. And it's a story that deserves to be remembered alongside the human heroes of World War II, because courage, it turns out, isn't exclusively a human trait after all.